Alright, welcome back to another Roblox programming tutorial / Roblox game development tutorial, and today we are talking all about the data type of a table. Now, tables arguably are one of the most important concepts and programming techniques to understand, and they are essential to any programming language, Roblox Studio included. And this is because it's one of the best ways to transfer information from one application and or platform and or script to another, is to contain everything into a table and then to send that table. If you ever study structured query language or SQL, all about tables and how to read them, use them, create them, and delete them. You use anything inside of, for example, Excel or Google Sheets, 100% going to have to know how tables work, and if you use the programming languages inside of those applications, for example, AppScript inside of Google Sheets or VBA inside of Excel, 100% going to know how tables work. And then anything in programming, anything web development related, app related, you're going to have to be pulling information from tables, probably using sequence / structured query language to do so. And tables is just that fundamental, and I really just wanted to talk about that because this is one of those programming concepts in Roblox Studio that extends to essentially everything, and you just have to know how tables work. So let's go ahead and talk about it. Tables are containers. In their simplest form are containers. Now, you may have heard me say that, variables are containers for data types, right? I said that in other videos. So, for example, local num lives equals 10. And yes, right? But you can actually take num lives here and make this a variable name for a container of data types, right? And that's all really a table is. It's just a container for multiple data types. You'll have various different types of tables in the various different programming languages like tuple in Python, tuple in Python. There's many different ways to use tables, but the outline is that it is a table. So let's go ahead and give an example here. I'm going to go ahead and list some decimal numbers here. And these are all going to be for transparency, right, of a part. So let's go ahead and find the local part. So go ahead and do local part is equal to the script parent. And then I can set the part.transparency here. Now, instead of setting this to a number, let's say I wanted to test out multiple different transparencies. I can go part properties, and I can do here, and I can type in 1. And what this will do, if I print the part.transparency, print part.transparency, is it's going to print this number here. And it's going to have a long little decimal here. Don't worry about that. The only reason why it's going to have that long decimal there is because it's going to round this. But you'll even see it change here. And the idea is that it pulls the first value in the table. So I go ahead and print this here. And as you can see, it prints the first value in this table. And there's a little bit of rounding going on here on the end because it's a transparency. But you don't have to worry about that. But you can go ahead and cycle through all the values in this table here, just like so. Now, an important concept about tables in Roblox Studio that is not true about other programming languages, for example, JavaScript, is that tables start with 1. Strings also start with the index of 1, which is super important to know too, but tables will always index at 1. And most programming languages, if you want to get the first element of a table, you would index at 0. But if you print this, for example, so I'm going to go ahead and print part properties down here, or parts, I'll just do part properties, colon 0, you'll see here, you'll get nil, because there is no 0 here. As well, if you go out of bounds of a table, so this is the bounds of a table, is going to be between 1, 2, 3, and 4, so any number in here should be 1, 2, 3, or 4. If I go out of bounds of a table, I will also get nil. And then last but not least, the other direction as well, I will also get nil. Some programming languages you can kind of come back like this direction with negatives, but you cannot do that in this. But that is how you would read information from a table, is by doing that. And it's super fundamental to understand how to pull those values. So you type in whatever the variable name is for your table, and then you put brackets here, and you can pull whatever value you would want. And tables are a great way to store information, and that's what makes them so versatile and so useful. Now, let's go ahead and look at an example of a different type of table. It's still a table, but it's considered to be different. And we'll go ahead and look at what makes it different here, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and take these values here, do 2, and then do 3 here. Now, the specific table that I have here in programming would be considered to be an array. The reason why it's an array is because this has contained all the same data type. Lua, this data type is a number. We've also talked about int values, which are whole numbers and their opposites. These are not whole numbers, so technically this would be like a float, for example. Don't have to worry about what that is if you are part of the class. Just understand that all of that is one data type and it's a number, right? So all of these are numbers. Now, let's say I didn't want these all to be numbers. Let's say I wanted this to be a string, for example. Let's say I wanted this to represent the part name. I wanted this to represent whether the part was anchored. And I wanted this to represent, the color. This is another type of table, but we would call this a list. And it's a list because the data types here are all different. So you have an a float here, you have a string, you have a boolean, and you have a color 3.new, right? Since those data types are different, that would be considered a list. But you can still use this functionally like the array that we saw, right? So they're really not super different in how they are used. As you can see here, it prints the first, second, and third values here and is used in the same way. The last thing really to keep in mind as well when it comes to this stuff is there's also a set. A set is essentially a table where none of the values repeat, or is a list where none of the values repeat. That's used in Python more. I just wanted to bring it up briefly here, but there are examples of sets. So for example, if you try to return a set in Java that looked like this, it would only print the first 3 elements and not the 4th because you have a repeat here. But just something to keep in mind here. But this is a great way to use and essentially assign values to things inside of your script. And because everything is stored here, if you want to change stuff, you change it up here just once and you don't have to, come through here and change things. So let me go ahead and show an example of why this is so valuable. So let's say I have a part here and I set this equal to the script.parent. Right now, instead of coming through here and going part.transparency is equal to 0.1, and I go part.name is equal to Anthony, right? And then I go part.anchored is true, right? Instead of doing it this way, what I can do is I can come here and I can go part properties and I can pull the first value of part properties. Then I can go part properties and I can pull the second value of part properties. And I can come here and do the third, right? Now let's go ahead and change things up here. So the transparency there is clearly not that. The name of this part is part, and then it is, let's go down, see if it's anchored. It should not be anchored. It is not anchored, right? So as you can see in the properties tab, none of these properties were that before, and I'll even change this to 0.5 so we can really see a difference. But this is a very effective way to assign values. Why? Because if I want to change any of this stuff later, right, or if I want to reuse this value here for true, I can, right? And all this is doing is just reading the information from this table. So let's go ahead and look here. I have my parts right here. I'm going to go ahead and move this out and up, right? And when I run it, it's going to perform all of those aspects on that part. So now it is anchored. As you can see, it's more see-through, right? The part name changed here, as you can see, and you can even add more stuff and create more values in here. And let's say I wanted to be more transparent. I would change it here once, and it's going to change down here. So I don't have to come racing through these part properties here to find where things are stored. I can just run here and look, and as you can see, it's become more transparent. And this is the value of tables. On top of that, if you want to send information to other scripts, right, or send information to a data store, for example, which we'll talk about a lot, it's sent through a table. And that's another reason why tables are so important, because this is a great way to send information. And it's super foundational to programming. But this is a great introduction to tables. We'll talk more about some different types of tables, for example, like key value pairs and stuff like that in the next video, but I just wanted to give you guys a basic overview. So let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next one.